Okay, good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov. Oh, really, I suppose I should say Shabbat Shalom, since I said Shavua Tov on Friday night, and everybody gave me grief about that. So Shavua Tov. We are going to start today a new subject, a new story and a new chapter, which follows on from the last one. We are starting chapter 21 in Shmuel Aleph. We have completed last week, for the time being, the story of David and Jonathan, the famous story which is related in the Haftarah of Machar Chodesh, which you're all very familiar with, even more familiar with it now since we spent the last few weeks going through it in detail. But now we're going to come to another story, which, to be honest, does not leave us with a sense of awe and respect for David Achimelech. One of the beauties of our religion versus some of the others is that we do not believe in saints. We do see the faults in our heroes, and we learn from those faults in our heroes. David Achimelech is a hero. David Melech Israel Chai v'Kayam. David, by the way, just as an interesting aside, David is the most popular biblical name for Jewish boys, and remains so. But he's a flawed character, and we see some flaws in his character in this coming chapter, in this coming story. And the Tanakh, the author of Shmuel Aleph, said to be Shmuel himself, is not afraid to tell us of David Achimelech's mistakes, and they're there for a reason, of course, for us to learn from them. So we're going to look at this rather tragic story, which David begins and King Shaul HaMelech finishes off. If it reflects badly on David, you will see that it reflects even more so badly on King Saul. So let's get into the story, and we'll see. Remind ourselves where we're up to. The end of chapter 20, King Saul makes his intentions to kill David very clear to Jonathan. Jonathan goes and tells David that his father intends to kill him. David knew that all along, and David had already told Jonathan this. Jonathan didn't want to believe it. He now does believe it because his father had clearly made that intention absolutely crystal clear. Jonathan goes to David. They have this business with the arrows, which, as Paul pointed out last week, seems a little bit superfluous, because anyway, he went and told him. And David then leaves the area. And as we said right at the end of last week's shiur, this first pasuk in chapter 21 could quite easily have been at the end of chapter 20. Let's just have a look at the end of chapter 20. I'll show you the screen to start with. There it is. There's the end of chapter 20. Let me just get that properly on the screen so I can see you all again. There we go. End of chapter 20. Jonathan says to David, "Go in peace, and bear in mind that we've sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, may the Lord be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever." A very poignant departing of David and Jonathan. They don't know whether they will ever see one another again. David has to run for his life, and that's the end of chapter 20. The beginning of chapter 21, the first pasuk, really belongs at the end of chapter 20. And he arose and went away, meaning David. David arose and went away, and Jonathan came into the city. So,
Steinsalz gives a nice introduction to this chapter.
Go on, tell us, Johnny, what does he say?
Should I read it?
Yes, please.
David flees from his father-in-law, the king, leaving his loved ones due to the danger he faces. He travels to the place that seems to him the most secure from Saul, the land of the Philistines, the sworn enemies of Israel. However, David does not find rest there and is forced to flee to one of the caves in his own tribe's territory. In Judah, several hundred men flock to him and come under his command. From there, he turns to the king of Moab and arranges for his parents to live there in order to ensure their safety. From there, he returns under the guidance of the prophet who is with him to the territory of Judah and hides in a forest.
Okay, well, that was a very nice introduction. It's just spoiled the story for us because we now know what's going to happen. But it is a very succinct. We're going to go into that in very great detail. No, I'm only kidding, Johnny. So we're going to go into that in great detail. What he doesn't say, interestingly, in that introduction, is the first part of this chapter, which is the story of the city of Nov. And we will start with verse 2. Jeffrey is not here. He's gone to the north today. So I'll do the reading from the screen. David came to Nov, to Achimelech the priest. Okay, Vayavo David Nove. He came to a place called Nov. Well, let's stop right there and ask our question: where is Nov? Anybody know where Nov is or was?
North. In the north.
In the north of what?
Israel.
No, is the answer. It is in the north, but it's in the north of Jerusalem. Let me show you where it is. Okay, let me show you where it is. There is a place called Nov in the north of Israel, but that is not biblical Nov. Okay, that is Moshav Nov, which is in the north. I think it's in the northern Galilee. But this is biblical Nov, is in a place called.
Steinsalz gives a very good description of where it is.
Go on.
Nov. Nov is mentioned as being adjacent to the city of Anatot, as mentioned in Nehemiah, and it is therefore generally assumed to have been located in the area of the modern-day Shuafat, between Anat and Bet Hanina. This location also fits the description of Sennacherib's campaign from Isaiah, culminating with the verse, "Even today we will stand at Nov. He will wave his hand at the mountain of the daughters of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem." Some have expressed the view that Nov was located at the top of the slope that overlooked Wadi Yoz, the upper channel of the Kidron Valley.
Okay, so Rav Steinsaltz identifies Nov as a place called Shuafat, which you will see on the screen now. Okay, Shuafat is over here. Shuafat, as you can see, is very close to Pisgat Ze'ev. It's in northeast Jerusalem. Just to get your bearings, here's French Hill, very close to French Hill. Just to get a bit more bearings, if I come out a little bit, you can see there is the main city of Yerushalayim there. There's the Kotel, and it is northeast of the city, almost due north of Har Habayit. That is the city of Nov, modern day Shuafat, which is a Palestinian town. Very close to, as you can see, very close to Pisgat Ze'ev. Now,
it's not a refugee camp. Sure.
Yes, it is. It's a Palestinian town or refugee camp. That's right. As it says over here, Shuafat is mostly Palestinian Arab neighborhood of East Jerusalem. It's been annexed now into Israel. It's located on the old Jerusalem-Ramallah road, about 3 miles north of the old city, as you can see directly north there. So that is where the old city of Nov was. Now, where was David running from? We know he came to Nov because we've just said so. Where was he running from? Paul, are you trying to tell us something? Because you're muted if you are. Oh, no. Okay. So where was David running from? Where did the whole business with David and Jonathan take place? Okay, let's go one step back to help you. When did Saul realize that David was missing?
Rosh Chodesh.
Rosh Chodesh. Okay, and what was happening on that Rosh Chodesh day?
Feast.
A feast. And where was that feast going to be held, do you think?
In Jerusalem.
In whose home do you think that feast took place?
In Jerusalem.
Shaul's.
In Shaul's home, correct.
Ah.
Right, in Shaul's palace, because his place was missing at the feast that Shaul was making for Rosh Chodesh. So, where was Shaul's palace? The clue is in the name. Shaul. Where did Shaul live? We've had it before. I'll give you a clue. Shaul lived on a hill. What is the word for a hill in Hebrew?
Shaul. Givat Shaul.
Thank you, Philip. Givat Shaul. Givat Shaul. It's in the clue is in the name. Okay, so Shaul lived in Givat Shaul. That's where he had his palace. And that's where the business with David and Jonathan took place. And that is the place from which David fled to the city of Nov. Now, where is in modern day towns or places, where is Givat Shaul? Does anybody know?
Tel Aviv.
No.
Givat Shmuel is in Tel Aviv. Sorry.
It's Jerusalem,
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
Yes, it is. And what have we just said about Nov? Where is that?
Northeast of Jerusalem.
Right, so they're not very far away.
No.
Okay, so let me show you where Givat Shaul is. Givat Shaul is a place which is today known as Tel Al-Ful. Tel Al-Ful. Okay, it is over here. Let's just come out a bit and you'll see where we are. It is just north of Shuafat. And in fact, it is 1.8 kilometers. That's all. 1.8 kilometers from Shuafat. Tel Al-Ful is the place which is thought to be biblical Givat Shaul. And anybody been there? Because if you have, you would see this. Have a look at this. You know what that is? There is a clue at the bottom of the page, if you can see it.
More details.
The other side.
Hussein's Royal Palace.
Thank you very much. Yes. This is Tel Al-Ful. This is thought to be the site of Givat Shmuel. Have a look on the right-hand side of my page here. How did I find that out? Well, I Google searched Givat Shmuel Bible, and this is what came up. These are the coordinates. Tel El-Ful. Now, this structure here.
That says Givat Shmuel, not Givat Shaul.
Yes, I know. I searched on Givat Shmuel, and then I realized I'd made a mistake. And if you look down here, where my pointer is, I went to Givat Shaul. Well spotted there, Paul. I went to Givat Shmuel and it didn't look right. What came up wasn't right because I knew it was Tel Al-Ful and I was looking for Tel Al-Ful. I didn't know how to spell it. So I went to Givat Shaul, but I went to Givat Shmuel by mistake, and then I realized my mistake, and I went to Givat Shaul, and this is what comes up. This is a place called Tel El Ful, which King Hussein of Jordan made during the time prior to 1967, between 1948 and 1967, when this area was under the control of the Jordanians. He started to build himself a palace at this place. And it was never finished. It was never finished. If you go over here to this place here, I'm now on the Givat Shaul website here. I think it goes to Givat. There it is. So, identification with Tel El Ful. This Givat is generally identified with Tel El Ful, a hill in the northern reaches of modern Jerusalem, on the outskirts of the Pisgat Ze'ev and Shuafat neighborhoods. Okay, King Hussein of Jordan began construction on his royal palace at Tel El Ful, but construction was halted when the Six-Day War broke out. Since Israel won the war, King Hussein's palace was never finished, and now all that remains is the skeleton of the building. There you can see a picture of it, which is a nice picture of it because you can see through it. It's the skeleton of the building, and the Israelis left it as that skeleton without either finishing it or demolishing it or doing anything with it, as a very clear statement to the world, and particularly to Jordan, that's a very stark picture, isn't it? That's King Hussein's unfinished palace, and it's unfinished, says Israel, as it were, because we won the war. So Tel El Ful is an interesting place, but what I wanted to show you was how close it is, how close the city of Nov is to Giv'ah. If these places are correct, and Givat Shaul or Giv'ah is Tel El Ful, and Nov is Shuafat, we're talking a very, very short distance. David ran away. Now, if that was me and I was running away, I would want to put as much distance as possible between me and King Shaul. In fact, I would be running to Nov in the north. I wouldn't be going 1.8 kilometers away and then stopping. Why do you think that he stopped in the city of Nov? What was in the city of Nov that was attractive to David to run to as a place where he could be in safety from Shaul? I have the text on the screen there for you, and you may get some clues from the text. What was in Nov that was so attractive to David?
The Mishkan was there.
The Mishkan was there. How do you know that, Avril?
Because he went to various places, and I remember it was in Nov, but I'm sure it said it earlier in the text that it was in Nov, didn't it? It
was in Nov, and it doesn't say it early in the text, but you're right. He went to Nov because the Mishkan was there. And so what if the Mishkan is there? What's so attractive about the Mishkan?
You could get sanctuary there.
Yes, you can get sanctuary there. That's right. It's a holy place. Now,
just like Sir Thomas More got sanctuary, but they still topped him.
Yeah. Well, it seems that David wasn't all that impressed with the sanctuary, if you like. But that's why, I'm sure that's why he went to Nov. Nov was a place where the Mishkan was. But interestingly, the Mishkan was not, as it were, completely there, because there was something missing. What was missing from the Mishkan in Nov?
Aaron
The Aaron. Where was that, Paul?
was in Shiloh.
Shiloh.
No, Shiloh had been destroyed by this time.
I don't know.
Dan.
The ark was in a place called Kiryat Ye'arim. Kiryat Ye'arim, and it stayed there. It stayed there until the reign of King David, and it was David that brought it from Kiryat Ye'arim to the city of Jerusalem. Now, where is Kiryat Ye'arim? There is a modern day Kiryat Ye'arim, which has another name. Say that again, Barbara.
Tellstone.
Tellstone, that's right. Tellstone is not a real name. It's a nickname. Its real name, Tellstone's real name, is Kiryat Ye'arim, which means, what does Kiryat Ye'arim mean? What's Kiryat?
The forest. Ya'ar is the forest.
That's right. Kiryat Ye'arim. It means it's a city of the forest. And where is Tellstone or Kiryat Ye'arim?
On the way out of Yerushalayim on Route 1.
That's right. Going in which direction?
North.
West.
North.
It's going northwest. You're both
Northwest.
right. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's where the Aaron was, and but the Mishkan was in Nov. How do we know that the Mishkan was in Nov? It doesn't say it in the text explicitly, but have a look at verse 2. And David came to Nov, El Achimelech HaKohen. Well, if he's a Kohen, then he must be, and you'll see later on, this is a whole city of Kohanim. Nov was the city of Kohanim. We've got a whole city of Kohanim. What are they going to be doing? What do the Kohanim do for a living? They work the Mishkan, right? They do all the avodah in the Mishkan. They do the korbanot. They do all the things that we're told in the Sefer Vayikra is done by the Kohanim, and they
Bichas Kohanim, yeah.
in the Mishkan. So Nov at the time was where the Mishkan was. So although it was only 1.8 kilometers away, I think David went to Nov because that was an obvious place to try and get sanctuary from Shaul, who's running after him. Now let's carry on in the story. David came to the city of Nov, and he came to Achimelech HaKohen. Now, it doesn't say that Achimelech was the Kohen Gadol, but I think he must have been either the Kohen Gadol or certainly one of the leaders of the Kohanim, because he seems to be in charge here. Now, Vayecherad Achimelech likrat David. What's Vayecherad?
And he was frightened, and he was frightened. Chareda, he feared.
Yes, trembling literally means to tremble.
Yeah,
tremble with fear. You're right. Tremble with fear. What word can you see in there that we use on a regular basis today?
Charedim.
Charedim, yes. Charedim, the word charedi means a trembler, literally. Somebody who is a trembler, somebody who is fearful. And it has, the use of the word charedi to mean what some people translate as ultra-Orthodox is because that group of people are supposedly fearful of God, and they are trembling before God. They are very God-fearing people, and they are known therefore as charedim, the people who tremble. That's the root of the word. So here, Achimelech is not trembling before God. He is not a charedi in that terminology. He is literally, physically trembling with fear, likrat David, as David approaches. Why is he so frightened? Why is Achimelech frightened of David? Michael?
Well, he's not frightened of David. He's frightened that Saul will find out that David's there.
Yeah, so somehow or other, I'm not sure how this is, but it's clear from the dialogue that, as Michael says, Achimelech is fearful that David is going to bring upon Achimelech the wrath of Shaul. And actually, Achimelech doesn't really want anything to do with David. And he's suspicious straight away. It must have been already known at that time that there was bad blood between David and Shaul. How do we know that? Well, Shaul has made no bones about it. He's said it to his servants. If you look back in chapter 20, let's have a little look back in chapter 20. And he says to his, it says in public, first of all, he's chucked his spear at him twice. And he says to his servants at somewhere in here, let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Saul's wrath was kindled against Jonathan, and he's very disparaging about Jonathan and his mother, curses him. And then he throws a spear at Jonathan. And it's very clear from now that David is a Ben Mavet. We say that somewhere there in here. I can't just, there it is. Ben Mavet. He says, for all the days the son of Jesse is living on the earth, you and your kingdom will not be established. And now send and take him to me, for he is condemned to death. Well, it's clear that wasn't done in private. That was done at the party, at the feast. Everybody by now will know, let's go back to our chapter, everybody will know by now that Saul and David are enemies, or at least Saul has bad intentions towards David. Achimelech is now suspicious, and he says to David, Madua ata levadecha ve'ish ein itach.
Rabbi Shansel says that Achimelech, I was going to say this as well, that he was excited to see David. He knew who David was and what he was going to be in the future, somehow or other. And he said, that's what he says. And I thought he must have known it.
You mean excited to see him in a positive way?
Yes, in a positive way. He knew he was the king. Well, he knew something. He knew something.
I don't know that. I'm not sure I agree with that.
He killed the Philistines. He knew it was a...
Yes, he certainly knew. He will have known David's prowess. He will have known about David's fame. But Vayecherad is an expression of fear. It's not an expression...
Sorry, in the art scroll it says that Achimelech was surprised. He was taken aback because normally he would come with escorts and he came on his own.
Well, that's the question now that he asks, isn't it? Why are you alone and there is no man with you? I'm going to come to that in a sec. But just to answer Johnny's point, I'm not sure that I agree with that a translation or that implication that Achimelech was excited in a positive way. Because if you look on in the story, Achimelech is clearly scared, and we don't have to look. We don't have to look on. Vayecherad is an expression of fear. There is no question about that. It doesn't say that he was mitragesh, or he was excited, or he was pleased. He was fearful. Vayecherad means fear. We have.
It does say alternatively, Achimelech went towards David trembling, but at first he was excited to see him.
At first he was excited.
Johnny, Chared.
Yes, Ivor.
Chared, I think it's wrong to say that it means fear. It's awe. It's awe-inspiring. It's also somebody who's very concerned. It's not necessarily somebody who is fearful. Because in the Jewish Review, which my late father was from and published since the 1940s, I once saw an advertisement in the 50s calling on all Haredi Jews. And who published it? The JNF, for planting forests. It's Jews who are concerned for the future of Israel.
Okay, so I'll accept that Haredi, that here.
Ivor, they didn't know Hebrew. Ivor, the JNF.
I will accept that Vayecherad means here that he was in awe of. He was trembling in awe. But I think if you look at the language, it's clear that he was concerned that he was getting himself involved in a dispute that he did not want to get involved in. So, yes, I think that the way Johnny put it latterly, which is initially he would have been very excited to see David. Yes, here you see the hero of Israel. That remember, the women had gone out and singing about David, that he'd slain the 10,000s. It must have been well known that he'd killed Goliath, etc. So yeah, I'm sure he was very excited to see this hero. But then when he thought about it for a minute, he was concerned. So that fits in with your translation of it being concerned. I think that fearful, concerned, in awe, I think all of those things, and initially excited, I will buy that as well. So let's have a look at what he says. He says, why are you alone and there is no man with you? If you are alone, then clearly you have no man with you. Why does he say it twice? Any suggestions?
Because he was never alone. He always had somebody with him.
All right. So he'd say, why are you alone? Or why have you got no man with you? Why does he say it twice?
Because when it's mentioned twice in the Chumash, it means it's definitely something. Definitely alone.
Definitely alone. Yeah.
No,
Okay, I think alone is probably binary, isn't it? You're either alone or you're not. But well, what you're saying is it's there for emphasis.
That's emphasis.
Okay.
When it was mentioned twice in the Torah, it's emphasizing something.
What does the word ish mean? What's the implication of ish often in the Torah?
Ish, Tomim, a high man.
Mensch, a mensch.
It means. Let me take you back to Parshat Vayishlach, the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach. Let me just see what chapter it is. We haven't got David Marks here to tell us what chapter it is, so I have to look it up. Vayishlach.
Ishtomim.
So if you have a look in chapter 33, I think. Hang on a minute, maybe 32. 1 second. No, it is in chapter 32. Let me get it on the screen for you, and you will see what I am getting at. Chapter 32 of Bereshit. Parshat Vayishlach. There we go. Jacob sent verse 4. Jacob sent angels ahead of him, well, malachim, messengers, to his brother Esav to see what was going on. Remember the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach. Yaakov sent messengers to see what was going on. Have a look at verse 7. The angels returned to Jacob saying, we came to your brother to Esav, and he is also coming to you, and 400 men are with him. Banu el achicha el Esav, we came to your brother Esav, v'gam holech likratcha, he's coming to meet you. V'arba meot ish imo. What kind of men did he have with him?
Soldiers.
Soldiers, armed men. Often in Tanakh, the word ish means armed men.
Except Johnny, that Esther says ish, tsar, and so on about Haman.
Yes, he does. Ish tsar v'oyev, that's right. But he's an enemy, isn't he? And I'm not suggesting that Ish is always an enemy, by the way, because it's not. And you're all right that Ish often does mean a higher level of person than Adam, and Ish is a higher level. But often in Tanakh, not always, but often in Tanakh, Ish has an implication of armed men. So if we go back to our chapter, Madua atala verdecha, why have you not got anybody with you? Now, you, David, are an important person. An important person doesn't travel on his own. He has a shamus with him. Remember when Shaul, before he was king, and he went out to look for his father's donkeys, he didn't go on his own, did he? He had a na'ar with him. He had an attendant with him. Avraham Avinu, when he went to do the Akedah, he took with him his na'ar. Important people don't travel on their own. So madua atalavadecha, the first part of that question, why are you on your own? That's suspicious. David, why haven't you got your shamus with you? The second part, the ish ein itach, is, I think, an implication of saying, and why haven't you got any armed guards with you? We know that you're in trouble with Shaul. This is very suspicious, says Achimelech to himself. He says, hang on a minute, David's here on his own. Why would he be on his own? He's not even got a shamus with him, and he's not got any bodyguards with him. And Achimelech is clearly suspicious. Now, he's got good reason to be suspicious, because what David now does is to tell Achimelech, well, basically a lie. We can't dress it up in any other way. Let's see what he says. Verse 3. And David said to Achimelech, the priest, the king charged me with a matter and said to me, let no man know anything concerning the matter upon which I am sending you and with which I have charged you. And I troubled the young men to advance to a hidden secret place. So he says, I'm on a secret mission for the king. And I do have men with me, but I've sent them on to this secret place where nobody's allowed to know where it is, because it's a very top secret on His Majesty's service, secret service, James Bond, and all that. I'm on a secret mission and I can't tell you, and that's why I'm on my own. Was that true? No, it was not true at all. First of all, he didn't have any men with him. Secondly, there was no hidden secret place. And most importantly, he was not on a secret mission for the king. He was running away from the king. So David lies to Achimelech. Was that justified?
No.
Why not?
He could have told him the truth and Achimelech might have hidden him.
Oh, okay, that's a good question. If he'd have told him the truth, what would Achimelech have likely done?
Reported to Saul.
Why?
Because he didn't want Saul to be in Saul's bad books and therefore possibly be killed by him.
Correct. He's got an obligation to the king. He would be guilty of something we spoke about last week, of mored b'malchut, of rebelling against the king. We know, don't we, that David has been condemned to death ostensibly for not showing up to the meal. Kal v'chomer, how much more so Achimelech is thinking, hang on a minute, if I harbor the king's enemy, that is definitely an act of rebellion against the king. Why would I want to do that? I'll get myself in right trouble. So if David had told Achimelech the truth, I think it's very likely, at the very least, you can say it is a safek, it is a doubt whether Achimelech would have harbored him. And more than likely, in my view, on balance of probabilities, Achimelech would have shocked him in to Shaul. And therefore, that puts David in a category of what?
Top danger.
Top danger, otherwise known as? Well, what's he fearful of?
Execution.
Who is he fearful? Who is David fearful of?
Saul.
And what does he think Saul's going to do to him?
And let's kill him.
Going to kill him, and therefore he is in a situation of
Fearing for his life.
correct. And what's that called in Hebrew? If you're fearful for your life, begins with a pay. Go on, Anita. You're muted. Anita, you're muted. Come on, you all know this.
Pachad hamavet.
Nearly. Pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh. You all knew that, didn't you? Okay, it's a situation of pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh means you're in mortal danger. And when you're in mortal danger, there are only 3 things that you're not allowed to do. The 3 cardinal sins. What are they? Number 1.
Killing somebody else.
Killing somebody else. Number 2.
Idol worship.
Idol worship. Number 3.
Immoral relations.
Morality.
Moral relations. Correct. Any of the arayot. Any of the illicit sexual relations. Other than those 3 cardinal sins, in a situation of pikuach nefesh, everything else goes out the window. So let me ask you the question again, Johnny, since you said no. Was it justified for David to tell a lie in this situation?
Yes.
Yes, it was, I believe, because he was in a situation of pikuach nefesh. He has got to be, at the very, very best, doubtful as to whether Achimelech will harbor him. And even in a case of safek pikuach nefesh, a doubt about being in mortal danger, everything else goes out the window, including Shabbat, kashrut, everything goes out the window apart from those 3 cardinal sins. David, in verse 3, is justified, in my view, in telling a lie in order that he can gain sanctuary and save his life from the pursuing Shaul, who, remember, is only 1.8 kilometers at the most away. So it is very imminent pikuach nefesh. So he tells Achimelech a lie. And then there's a funny conversation here in verse 4. Have you still got the screen on, by the way? Yeah. So verse 4. Ve'ata, and now, ma yesh tachat yadacha. What is there in your hand? In other words, what's that you've got there? Chamisha lechem tana b'yadi. Now, this is a very strange construction of this sentence. It goes like this. And now what is there in your hand? 5 loaves, give them into my hand. O hanimta, or whatever you've got, or whatever is found. And that appears to all be the continuation of David speaking to Achimelech. But the Mefarshim point out, the Radak particularly points out, that this is a literary technique which is not quite as it seems. He suggests that actually this conversation goes like this. David says, and now what is that in your hand? Achimelech says, 5 loaves of bread. And then David says, give it to me in my hand, or whatever else you've got. But it's said as if David is saying it all to give a sense of urgency. As if David is saying, what's that in your hand? Oh, I can see you've got 5 loaves of bread. Give it to me, or whatever you've got. And it's not a backwards and forwards conversation and negotiation here. This is David speaking very urgently, and he wants this bread or whatever it is that Achimelech has got. Now, why does he want this bread?
He's hungry. He's been on the run.
Been on the run. He's not been on the run very far, though, has he?
No.
However, he has been out hiding for a couple of days because he's not been at the feast, has he? So, yes, he's hungry. We know that from what comes on later. He's hungry and he wants these loaves of bread. Now, if you're Achimelech and you know that Shaul is seeking David's life and you don't really want to give him sanctuary, what else don't you want to give him?
Bread.
Bread.
Provisions.
Yeah. You don't want to give him provisions because you'll also be accused of harboring or assisting or enabling somebody who the king has decided is a ben mavet.
Aiding and abetting.
Aiding and abetting, that's right. He will be guilty by association there. So he's probably not all that chuffed about being put in this position by David. And so how does he answer? Tries to get out of it. Tries to get out of it. And look at the verse 5. Vaya'an hakohen. All of a sudden, he's described not as Achimelech or not as Achimelech hakohen. He's described as hakohen. The priest answered David. Why is he now not referred to as his name, but is referred to as the priest?
Why don't you say Vayan HaKohen to David? Vayan David et HaKohen.
No, you're on the wrong pasuk. Go one pasuk ahead.
Oh, sorry, yes, I'm one.
Because he's presented as a person of authority. He's just acting in that role as the priest.
Yeah, it's right. What he's about to say is priestly matters. He's about to say that you can't have this bread, David, because it's holy bread. And who eats holy bread?
Kohanim.
Kohanim. And who does not eat holy bread?
Anybody else.
Anybody else.
Otherwise.
Known in the Torah as zar. Ish zar. What does that word zar mean?
How do you spell it? Zion.
Strange.
Reish.
Strange or
strange. Where have we had that?
Foreign.
Foreign. Yeah, strange. In other words, not the same as. Where have we had it recently in the Torah, in our laning?
The fire was a strange fire.
Yes, the fire which killed Nadav and Avihu was called Eish Zara. Eish is a feminine word, so the feminine of Zar is Zara. Eish Zara, strange or foreign fire. So a non-Kohen is called a Zar in this regard. So Vayan HaKohen, it's David. Achimelech now is speaking in his role as a Kohen. And he says to David, Vayomer, and he says, Ein lechem chol el tachat yadi. I don't have any, what's chol?
non-holy, ordinary.
Ordinary, that's right. Literally meaning, what's the literal word for that? Literal translation?
Unsanctified.
Yes, that would be a very good translation. Unsanctified. Profane.
Yeah.
Chilul Hashem.
Hashem.
The same word. Okay. Hamavdil ben Kodesh.
L'chol.
L'chol.
Weekday.
Chol Hamoed. Yemei Hachol, the days of the week. Okay. Yemei Hachol is not Yemei HaShavua, the days of the week. Chol is the opposite of Shabbat, because Shabbat is holy. The weekdays are profane or mundane or non-holy or unsanctified. So he says, I don't have any unsanctified bread in my possession. Ki im, that's a biblical expression. I don't think you can use that in modern Hebrew today. although I did know somebody who used to go and speak biblical Hebrew around. I was once in a supermarket when this bloke came along and said to the cashier, "Hineni, here I am." This poor girl, I thought she was going to wet herself. She was laughing that much. There was this fellow speaking biblical Hebrew. Imagine going into Sainsbury's and speaking Chaucerian or Shakespearean English. Well, that's what this must have sounded like to this girl. It was very funny. Anyway, ki-im is a biblical expression which means rather or except or but. Ki-im lechem kodesh. I only have holy bread. Yesh. Ki-im lechem kodesh. Yesh. I only have holy bread. What kind of holy bread is he talking about here?
The showbread.
Ah, the shoebreds.
Showbread.
Shoebreds. I always thought shoebreds were breads that you wore on your feet, but it's Shehew, or the shoebreds. That's how we know, Avril links, that Nov was the place where the Mishkan was, because Achimelech tells us that he's got holy bread, which are the shoebreds. What do the shoebreds look like?
Like square things.
Yeah, well, not according to
rectangular. Oh no, the flat.
Not according to the images of Google,
Oh.
Which is why I wanted to show it you, because it's wrong. Avril is right. If you go to an authoritative website and you go to the Machon HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, you will see that. You know what that is?
That's where they were stored. That's where they used to store all the bread.
Yeah, this thing here, this base here, if you measure it, you will find, amazingly, that it is, I can't remember now the exact measurements of the Shulchan, whether it was an amma by an amma and a half or whatever it was, I can't remember. I'm sure that David Marks, worried to be here, would tell us instantly what the measurements of the Shulchan were. That is the Shulchan, and on top of the Shulchan was placed the what's it called in Hebrew? The shoebreds.
Lechem.
Come on, lechem. It's on the tip of your tongue. Yes, well done, Barbara. Lechem apanim.
Yeah.
Literally meaning
to show it.
Lechem apanim, the bread of the face. What do you do with your face? You show your face. Yeah. So it's a shoebreds. It's the showbreads. Okay. And the other explanation of lechem apanim was that they faced one another. The breads faced one another. There were 12 loaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 loaves on one side, 12 loaves on the other side. So you've got the lechem apanim on top of the Shulchan. Where did the Shulchan live? In the Mishkan. Ergo, we know that the Mishkan was in Nov. So Achimelech says, go back to the words here. Achimelech says, I don't have any regular bread, any chol dika bread, any weekday bread. I've only got lechem apanim. I've only got kodesh bread. And im nishmaru haniarim ach mei isha. And so he says, you can't have this lechem apanim because your young men. What young men? He's just said he's on his own. What's going on here, Paul?
I don't know.
Anita, what's it going on?
But he told him he sent them ahead.
Yeah, he's talking about those men that he sent ahead to the secret place.
No.
Remember? So we know that he hasn't got anyone with him. But Achimelech thinks he's got a whole bunch of people that he's sent off to some secret place, which I'm going to come back to in a second, by the way, the secret place. And he says, what about those young men? What do young men do? Young men do things with young women. Well, not necessarily young women, but anyway, They get involved in activities which would make them impure. So he says, you can't have this holy bread because your young men may not be pure. They may be ritually impure from knocking about with women, and therefore you can't have it. So hang on a minute. What's the problem with that?
The men aren't there.
Well, okay, the men aren't there, but he wants all this bread to take to his men. But there's another problem with that. You've already told me who can eat this bread.
Kohanim.
Kohanim. And these men are not Kohanim. So why doesn't Achimelech say, I can't give you this holy bread because you're not Kohanim? Why does he say, I'm not giving you this holy bread, or I can't give you this holy bread because your men might be impure?
You might realize it's pikuach nefesh again.
Well, if it's pikuach nefesh, then it makes a difference whether they're pure or impure. Goes out the window.
He most probably realizes at this stage that there's a problem.
He's smelt a rat, hasn't he, here? But it's interesting because some of them are Forshim. Let me tell you, see if I can find out who it is. One sec. I can't remember now where I read it. But one of the Mefarshim say that these were not the Lechem Apanim. What other holy bread is there which is holy but can be eaten by non-Kohanim, but they've got to be pure? They've got to be tahor. And I'll give you a clue.
Lechem oni.
What? Matzah?
I don't know, I'm just thinking.
I'll give you a clue. You have said something this morning in davening, which is in lieu of it. And I'll give you another clue. Because it's in lieu of it, we do not say it on Erev Pesach and Erev Yom Kippur. Oh, Paul's getting there. I can see the cogs working.
Mizmola Todah.
Mizmola Todah. Well done, Johnny. Mizmola Todah. We do not say on Erev Pesach and Erev Yom Kippur. Why?
Because it's an offering that you didn't do then.
It's an offering that you did not bring on Erev Yom Kippur or Erev Pesach. Why didn't you bring it on that day? What did it consist of, this Mizmor LeTorah, this Korban Todah, this
leavened bread?
Leavened bread, correct. It consisted of bread. And on Erev Pesach, you haven't got time to eat it all. And on Erev Yom Kippur, you haven't got time to eat it all. And therefore, you're not allowed to leave it over. And so you did not bring a Korban Todah, a thanksgiving offering, which can be brought anytime. You did not bring it on Erev Yom Kippur or Erev Pesach. So some of the Mefarshim say this was not the Lechem Apanim, the shoe breads that he was talking about. What he was talking about was there was bread from a Korban Todah that David himself had brought. Now, that doesn't make sense because David would say, well, what is it there? But if somebody else had brought a Korban Todah, that bread could be eaten by anybody who was not Tameh. Doesn't have to be a Kohen. So the Mefarshim say that from here, from the fact that Achimelech said, I can't give you this bread because your men might not be tahor, they may be impure from knocking about with women, then he's indicating that this wasn't lechem apanim, because that wouldn't be a good excuse for that. A better excuse for that would be you're not kohanim. but if you're impure, you wouldn't be able to eat the bread of the Korban Todah. So the Mefarshim say that the bread that he was referring to, these 5 loaves, were in fact the part of a Korban Todah. We will stop there because we've run out of time. I just want to point out one last thing. In the end of verse 3, David says, I've sent these men off to a hidden secret place. Look at the Hebrew, El Makom Ploni Almoni. What does Ploni Almoni mean? And where do we have it?
Anybody else?
Anonymous, is it?
Boaz.
Yes.
The one was before Boaz.
Yes. There we go. Have a look on the screen. Beginning of chapter 4 of Ruth. And Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz had spoken, in other words, the Goel who could have redeemed Ruth before Boaz, was passing, and he said, turn aside and sit down here, so and so. Suru shva po ploni almoni. And the Mefarshim all say that this is a term of criticism, if you like. This Ploni Almoni is called so-and-so. He's an anonymous person. Why do they stress his anonymity here in Ruth? Because he had a chance to become the great-grandfather of David Achimelech. Because he had a chance to marry Ruth, and he blew it. He said, no thanks, and Boaz stepped in. So here, this so-and-so was lost to history. He just became Ploni Almoni. He could have been a big name like Boaz, but he wasn't. So the Mefarshim say that Ploni Almoni, in this context at least, is a negative expression, but it means so-and-so. We don't need to know where it is. It's hidden. Almon is another word which means hidden. And in our chapter here, it's a hidden and secret place that David refers to. It doesn't really exist, of course. We know it doesn't really exist, but he calls it Ploni Almoni. Okay, so we will leave it there. At this point, Achimelech has said to David, I can't give you this bread because your young men may not be pure. He's not bold enough to say to David, you may not be pure, but this is a little bit of projection and euphemism. He's also saying, how do I know that you're pure, David? Not just your men, it might be you as well. But Achimelech, as if you like, he's not happy. He's trying to get out of giving this bread to David for the reasons that we've said. He doesn't want to be in Shaul's bad books. He doesn't want to be Mored b'Malchut. He doesn't want to be Chayav Mita. He doesn't want to be putting himself in the possibility of the death penalty. So we will see how David answers in verse 6 next week. But in the meantime, are there any questions or comments on today's shiur?
No.
No? Well, in that case, Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov.
Excellent.
See you all next time. See you all next time. But let me just stop the recording. Where are we? Recording. Stop.